Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second video of the day for today, the 21st of February. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm going to. This isn't really a church at home. It's more of a state of my brain moment here. For those of you who have paid attention over the years, you'll know that I'm a bit of a rabid hockey fan, and I have great hope in the in the underdog. I cheer for the Montreal Canadiens, things like that. But I always cheer for Canada. Regardless of what we're doing, I always cheer for Canada. And as I watched the hockey game last night, the Four Nations Cup, and I listened to the rhetoric and the reaction to the Americans when we would score or during our national anthem, and have spoken before about how I disagree with Canadians booing the American national anthem. Well, I just as much disagree with them booing ours. And I realized last night I was watching the game and getting so anxious because, we're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. And finally it goes into overtime, and Connor McDavid scores the winning goal, and the Canadians won. And then to see as the presentations and the anthem, the Americans were gone. They didn't stand on the ice. In the Olympics and in other competitions, both teams remain as the awards are handed out and as the anthems are being played. It just because of respect. And that's one thing that I have always loved about hockey is the great deal of respect. It doesn't matter. These guys are all NHL players who play with each other on their original, like on their NHL teams, who are just playing for their countries in the Four Nations Cup. And I found it extremely difficult to watch last night, watching and realizing that this hockey game has become about more than just a hockey game. A few years ago, watching a game like that, a Canada versus US game, the Olympics, juniors, whatever, that was tough. It was like, of course I want to win. We're Canadian. That's the thing. But it wasn't devastating. And I realized last night just how tied up in knots my gut was in the idea that we might lose. Because it helped me understand just how deeply within my own personality, within my own head, this whole 51st state thing has come to rest. I don't think that we can pretend as Canadians that this is just a talking point, that this is just noise, like Trump saying, look here, 51st state, while we don't look while we're doing this over here. He's not that smart. I think this is really about someone who wants to be the king of the world, and he's telegraphing his steps. And I hadn't realized just how powerfully I disagree with the idea that Canada would give up its sovereignty until I watched that hockey game last night. And I realized that within myself, I had a lot more going on than simply wanting to cheer on my home team. I felt like I was cheering on my own country. I gotta say, I was a little bit embarrassed by Chantal Kraviatzik's version of "Oh Canada," and then somebody pointed out that she changed the words and "in all of us command" into something about the fact that only in our command. I mean, if indeed that's what she said, well, you shouldn't be messing with the national anthem. I get the idea, but don't turn it into a Canadian or American Idol thing. Sing the anthem. And one thing I appreciated was the way the American anthem was sung. The Canadian anthem should be sung the way it was written, and we should be sung with pride. And I don't feel that it was last night, and it felt like a bad way to start, but we came back. But it's helping me to realize just how absolutely both visceral the reaction I have to what is happening and what could possibly happen to Canada, but also within Canada. There is on the highway, the QE2 in Alberta between Edmonton and Calgary. Apparently somebody paid for a massive billboard sign that says something about Danielle, whatever her name is, the leader of the premier of Alberta. We want to become the 51st state. I do not understand that. When I hear people speaking things like that, I want to say to them, have you never had to go to the emergency room at the hospital? Have you never had to concern yourself about your child's education? Canada has, yeah, we got lots of problems and we got lots of issues. Yes, we pay high taxes, but we also get to go to the hospital if we need to. We get to go and have like cancer treatments, and we get to go to doctor's appointments and never see a bill. And yes, there's a doctor shortage, but there wouldn't be if we all had to pay a bill because nobody could afford to go to the doctors. I don't know what's happening to our country, and I'm terrified that all of this 51st state noise is going to literally brainwash people. That people will begin thinking that somehow, how they could think this, I don't know, but somehow being American would be so much better than being Canadian. I got news for you. I don't think in terms of the best country in the world and things like that. I think in terms of where do we have the resources that we need for our lives. And Canada has those resources. And for the most part, and until now, has done a good job of reminding us and working with us to know that we have healthcare, we have education, we have we have jobs if we're willing to work with them. We are kind. We welcome immigrants and try to help them integrate without telling them, for the most part, that they're horrible, they need to go home. We look at the world stage and recognize that we are not a world power, and hence we need to participate in helping to run the world. Sit down and have conversations. Give and take, negotiate, not threaten. Yesterday, last night, that hockey game was about a lot more than simply winning a sports event. You know, as somebody told me I could call him, the buffoon, called up the American hockey team and gave them a pep talk in the morning before the game. And everybody, all the players were so amazed, according to their White House press secretary, that they were all so happy to be able to. And then, then the press secretary said something to the effect that they'll be so glad to trounce the 51st state. Those should be fighting words for Canadians. We need to be standing up and saying the things that we hold to be important in our lives are potentially being threatened. And I think probably the potentially could be dropped. We need to really pay attention to what is happening in the world. We need to pay attention to what is happening with Ukraine. If a negotiated settlement happens without Zelensky and the Ukraine people at the table, if Russia simply gets to keep the parts of Ukraine it has decided to take, if Zelensky is somehow deposed because he's stopping elections in the middle of a war that he did not start, if the world really looks at him and says that he is a dictator, as Putin dictates to Trump, the buffoon, and all of these other things, what do you think is going to happen? If Russia is allowed to infiltrate and take and steal and take over Ukraine, it won't be long before it's Poland and Latvia and the Balkan states. And it won't be long before it's further and further and further. Because that's what he wants to do. He doesn't care about his own soldiers or the people at home, the thousands of children that were stolen from Ukraine and are now living in Russia, who may never ever see their families again, who are being brainwashed and told, if they're being treated well at all, they're being told that they're now Russian citizens. This is not just a cautionary tale. This is a fact that's happening. We need to stand up and tell the truth about Ukraine and Panama and Greenland and Canada, the Arctic waters, which are Canadian. We can work with other people in international law to figure out best ways to share our resources and to work with other countries. But I don't really want to have our country taken over by someone else, especially by a buffoon, by someone who is eliminating women's health, women's rights for their bodies, but also now the potential plan to eliminate their ability to vote because of what's on their birth certificate. We need to do the work here in Canada of getting our heads out of our ridiculous orifices, paying attention to what's really going on, doing the work of discovering who is funding Pierre Poilievre or Carney or any of the people, doing the work of discovering what is the truth, not a truth or the other truth, the alternative facts. What is the truth? And how can we determine what will happen in our country? Rather than having Elon Musk allegedly supporting Poilievre's campaign, or other billionaires or millionaires propping up someone that they believe that they can tell what to do. Apparently, they haven't actually paid much attention to Canadian politics because it's not quite as easy to own the government in Canada as it is in the States. But when the threat is made, we must take it seriously. No. Last night was not just about watching a hockey game with national pride. Last night brought it home to me how deeply seated is my fear that what is happening might soon be irreversible. But I have hope, and I trust my fellow Canadians that we will stand up. So, yeah, this isn't a church at home with Rachael thing. This is just here at home with Rachael, a Canadian who's glad she was born in this wonderful country, who's proud to stand up and sing her anthem and knows all the words to our national anthem, O Canada, and who is glad to say that we are the ones who birthed Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. And all of those Canadians who stood last night at center ice and sang their national anthem because we won the Four Nations Cup. It wasn't a rigged thing. The fix wasn't in. We won. Tight battle, but we won. Maybe that's the lesson we need to learn. The battles we have to face are going to be tight, but we can win them. Here ends the lesson on patriotism for Canada. Thanks for hanging with me, and I'm sorry this wasn't a real church at home thing, but it's something I really felt I needed to get off my chest today. God bless. Have a great weekend. See you Sunday for Gospel on the Go, and next Monday for Church at Home with Rachael, which will be back to normal. Bye-bye, everybody.